Welcome back, everybody. Another episode of the Fixed Ops Mastermind powered by OEM Interactive. This week, we are talking about productivity killers and specifically in the shop productivity killers with our guest, Marco Zwanenberg and Robert Migliaccio.
How you doing?
I brought on two of the hardest names that I could possibly pronounce at the same time. Thank you for being with us, guys. Before we get going, a thank you to our sponsor, IntelliCheck. This episode brought to you by IntelliCheck. Do you know your pain points that caused customers to leave? Would you like to know if your advisors are offering to book appointments, quoting prices, and interacting with your customers as you expect? With IntelliCheck, you can know it all and have a plan to fix it. Thank you, IntelliCheck. And so we'll break the show up into three segments. Segment 1, the technician's role in productivity. Segment 2 is the leader's role in productivity. And segment 3 is working together. And so as we get started, we all know that the techs are the only ones that actually produce any income in a dealership, right? The rest of us are all expenses, as much as people don't like to hear that. And GMs and service directors will tell us all the time that that's not true, but it's true. Techs are the only ones that actually produce anything in a dealership. And so their productivity is extremely important. And so, Marco, being a guy who's in the shop every day, what would you say is the number one thing that a tech can do to ensure their own productivity?
Stick with the policies and procedures. That's probably one of my main ones. Like, we have all sorts of software available to us. We have workshop information to us. We use either Reynolds or CDK, whichever one you're on. Is like, use your hold times appropriately. If you're an authorization hold, put authorization hold. If you want to communicate with an advisor or parts, use the system that you have. So like, we use AutoPoint, for example, and all our communication goes from tech to parts to advisors and management through that system. Stick with that, because the only place technicians make money is in their bay. That's where I need to be. I don't want to leave it unless I have to go to the bathroom and want to take a fresh breath of air. That's it.
That is very true. Being in your bay, and it's tempting, right, Marco, to go, just going to pop up to the service desk and find out if the advisor got a hold of this customer, right? But that's a huge loss of productivity. Not just the minute or 2 minutes it might take you to walk to that desk, right? But you've now stopped whatever you were doing, and you're going to stop the advisor from whatever they're doing. So you're affecting their productivity also. Right. And typically it's not a straight line from that bay to the advisor's desk, right?
No, absolutely not. No.
There are other stops that get made. And then you still have to come back to your bay and go, where was I on this car I was working on? Right. And get yourself back into that.
Absolutely. And that's where mistakes starting to get made. If you get pulled off your work for whatever reason and you forgot something that either you did a certain order and now you're out of order, so you have to do it again. Either way, it goes back to my previous statement. I'm supposed to be in my bay, because not only am I losing my time and advisor's time going out to see them, but I'm out of my zone. I took my earbuds out, so my podcast stopped, my music stopped. I'm like, I'm already agitated because now I have to go find out because they're not working quick enough for me. So I'm already, pouty face, stompy foot back into my bay. And now I'm like, I don't want it anymore. Well, how is this helping with anything, Like, one of my main things, I think, when it comes down to productivity, and like, I don't want to pin everything on the advisor here, by far not. Most of them do an excellent job, but get proper information. Line 1, customer states there is a noise. Right? Okay, when, how, cold, hot, turn, is it what, sitting still? Is it driving? Is it braking? There's a fluid leak. Okay, it's like, we all have these things here, gentlemen and ladies. Take pictures, take sound bites, take videos, bring it with you. With most of the systems that we use nowadays, you can even just text it or email it to your advisor, and I can see it too. Help me help you. Let's keep the ball rolling. So that is really one of my main pet peeves. Like where I work at, most advisors do a great job at it, but I've seen a lot worse.
Yeah. So I'm going to make this easy on myself and just call you Migs the whole show.
It works.
So from your side, from the leader's standpoint, what's the number one thing that you can do to help your techs be productive?
So from my view, the number one thing that we can do from the front of the house to the back of the house for the technician, obviously Marco had a key point there. Documentation is key. I think that's huge. That and proper organization of what you're going to do with those repair orders and who's going to be working on them. I think a big one that gets into the productivity killers is giving the wrong vehicle to the wrong technician ultimately drives that person to be set up. Now, granted, hey, the new guy's got to learn every once in a while, but not at the cost of the customer, not at the cost of the store, not at the cost of the shop. So there's situations where that time management becomes null and void at that point because you have a guy who's taken 2-3 hours to look over a vehicle that may only take a Marco, 10, 15, 20 minutes to look at just because of the knowledge base and the understanding and whatnot that's there. So I think dispatching is key from our side of the world to them and not setting them up to fail. I think when you don't dispatch that properly and you do that to a technician, that's where you really set them up to ultimately fail, especially if you have that technician on a flat rate or a base pay in that regard that sets them apart from an hourly technician or something like that, where it's going to drive that angst and anxiety on them because all they're doing is watching the clock the whole time as they're trying to go through that.
Yep. Totally agree. And so that takes me into my next question, which is about the schedule itself. And so does it help to know the schedule ahead of time, Marco, for you as a technician? So in the stores that I ran, I always had, I called it a morning huddle, where we met 15 minutes before the store opened. And we literally went through what the schedule was, right? What was coming in. If there was diagnostic work coming in, then my diagnostic techs knew the cars that were coming in, what the concern was, and what time those were coming in, so they could be prepared for that. As well as going over any parts that came in overnight, anything that was back ordered that we had to find out about. Sometimes it was parts went and raised their hands and said, nobody asked me to order that. Right. So, you kind of catch those things. How much of a help is it as a technician to know the schedule in the morning of what's coming in through the day?
I think now it's more important than ever, since most technicians only have one bay to use. So it's, if you know what parts you have in, like first thing in the morning, you see it on your screen or you get a printout. If you know what parts you have for what cars, do I have all the parts there? Can I finish this car today? Do I need a lift for this car, or can I park another car that needs a software update, for example, or just you have to evacuate the AC system, which nowadays with the R1234YF takes forever, as we know. The old 134A machines, that would suck mud if you wanted to. But these things, oh my God, you're flatulent in the wrong direction and it goes bonkers. So we can, so you build your day like that. It's like, okay, time management, like Robert said, I call it priority management. No one can manage time. It's going to flow anyways. Priority management. This car on the bay, this car behind it. While it's doing the sucking stuff on the AC system, I could be draining the oil, rotating the tires, flushing the brakes. And that is something as simple too. Like when you rotate the tires and the brake flush on the same surface, do it at the same time. You got the car up in the air anyways, wheels off, calipers are right there. I see so many guys that do the rotation, then the car goes up higher in the air, and then they try to get, these little bleeder screws. It's not working. So to answer your question in a long about way, it's very helpful. It's very helpful. And it also is very helpful to know what the workload is going to be coming in today. You're never 100% sure, of course, with waiters, etc. When I was dispatching at a Mercedes store here, I would, if a VOR part came in, a special order part that we had to pay for overnight, that was done first. I didn't care what else you had going on. That was done first. Get this part on there, get it out of there. And what I did to limit waiters, and it worked pretty well. If an advisor wrote a waiter, I would give it to a technician that was working on that advisor's car. They learned really quick that, of course, waiters are unavoidable. I'm not saying that, we have to kick them out, but certain things just shouldn't be waiters. Like if a car comes off the highway, they want a transmission oil change. No, it's things like that. So there's ways to, tame the beast, so to speak. But yes, it's very, very important. Like I said, especially nowadays.
Migs, at your stores, is that something that you do? Is reviewing the schedule with the techs and with parts and things every day something that is done?
Well, first I just gotta say I've been doing this a long time, and Marco, I think that's the first time I've heard that process of dispatching on an advisor's case point for a waiter. That is phenomenal. I love it.
Thanks.
This is probably one of my favorite parts of what we do in the service side. Is it's honestly probably the biggest game we play is this part. Technicians do what they do, parts guys do what they do, advisors do what they do, but ultimately the schedule is the biggest unknown that we deal with every single day. You could schedule a day full of every car being diagnostics and all of them be nothing, or you can set up a day with 5 cars and be buried in the wind in the shop. So it does play a big kind of twist into what you do every day. As far as for us, the technicians are available to see the schedule. So they have a viewpoint on what's coming in. They can actually see that. We use CDK, so they're functional and able to see what's coming in throughout the day. Stuff that is related to a technician specifically, if it's for them, is pre-tagged and they can see that as well. And then also even our express side, they're able to see the cars coming in, what the workflow looks like on their schedule, and what they need to do in order to make sure that they have available space available for them too. So, but to Marco's point, I think it's huge because it does help you plan your day across the board, not even just the technicians, but the advisors. And realistically, you start to have that game plan kind of pre-built. In that world of dispatching and like Marco said, prioritizing things, you know what technicians are already going to start getting which vehicles and where they need to be at that point in time. Certain things like Marco said, if that technician's aware of what's coming in, they're going to have their bay prepped and ready to go for the most part. And when they're doing that, because they know already what's coming in. So they're going to have that vehicle in the air, like he's saying, working on it. He knows he's going to have to dead bay that car behind him, or he's going to have to get that one done and get the vehicle ready to get up on that lift. So I think it does push the technician a little bit more because they're aware of what's coming in and how soon they have to finish what they're doing, as well as kind of push the advisors and the technicians to ultimately, like you said at the beginning, start to communicate and really kind of tie things together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, it was always that morning huddle became the link that kept the unknown from happening a lot of times. Like I said, someone from parts going, yeah, we never, because you'd go around with what are we waiting for? What cars do we have that are in process, right? That are gonna get fixed today, tomorrow, whenever, and inevitably a tech, Marco says, well, I'm waiting for an O2 sensor for that Mercedes over there, and parts goes, oh, we didn't order one. Nobody asked us to, or whatever it was, or it's something else, maybe it was, hey, Marco, at 11:30, I have a check engine light car coming in for you. It's one you looked at last month and we couldn't verify the problem. And you say, don't forget, I'm leaving at 10 o'clock for a doctor's appointment today, so I won't be here at 11:30. Right. So now we know we need to move some things around. So it helped bring out those frustration points early in the morning, so you could find a way around them, rather than the dispatcher walking out in the shop at 11:30 with that check engine light for Marco and going, what do you mean Marco's not here?
Yeah.
Right.
Fire Joe ready.
Right.
And I'll
on the bus we go.
Yeah.
And I will second Miggs on his kudos to you on that dispatching technique. I wish I had thought of that. that is.
Feel free to use it, gentlemen. Feel free to. It works
I'm
like a
gonna. I
charm.
might have to.
Yep.
That's a great way to treat them back to let them see exactly
Absolutely.
how it feels. So we all know what happens.
Yeah,
we all know
that
what
is
happens.
Perfect.
That is terrific.
Let's go for it.
So, Marco, you mentioned not time management, but priority management. But either way, whether it's time management or priority management, it's something that is unbelievably important, right? In your day, as you described, doing the brake flush while you have the vehicle up doing the tire rotation. Sometimes it's something that's not as clear cut as that, but if you did things in a certain order, it would have been a lot quicker. Um, how important do you think it would be to have all the techs in the shop take some sort of training or coaching on time management, priority management, whatever you want to call it, but understanding a little better how to actually prioritize the work on that repair order, and not just the work on the repair order. It can be a bunch of things, right? It can be a knowing when to prioritize. When should I go to parts to talk to parts, right? About the car I'm working on, so you don't end up over there 3 times on the same car.
It's extremely important. I would say bring it up at your next technician meeting. Wait about 2 weeks because as technicians, we're going to like yell and curse you, and like, no, we're doing now. You don't know anything. Well, like, so give us 2 weeks to like, oh, wait a minute, we could actually make more money like this, and then reapproach it. But no, it's absolutely, you need to have a routine. Like when I pull a car into my bay, it's like the first thing that's going to happen is the MPI. First thing, do the MPI. Get that done, even though I'm kind of on the fence about, the whole quarter time thing, because do we really want to hit these people with like, hey, you're going to need, like the brands I work on, a set of tires in alignment will set you back like $3,000. Okay. But I brought it in for a squeak. What is that? Oh, we don't know that yet. But you need to, so it's a little bit of a touchy subject, but get at least an MPI done so they can be working on it. Parts can be working on it. Advisor can be working on it while you are working on the vehicle. What I'm also thinking that I do is I always set the tire pressures and fill up the fluids, even if the car is going to go back to the parking lot to wait for a part. Because what if the customer declines it, and now I'm going to have to pull that car back in my already overfull base to do the tire pressures, or set the tire pressures and do the fluid levels, or forget about it. And now the customer goes down the road. They're already pissed because they had to pay way too much to get their baby fixed. And now, now this line is on. They're like, what do you mean I have no washer fluid? So it's very important to set up these routines and be just efficient in managing your time that you have there with the priorities that you have for that day. Because at the end of the day, it's all about the customer. I mean, I don't work for the manufacturer. They don't sign my paycheck. The dealership that I work for does. How do they generate their money? By a customer swiping their card or writing a check. So at the end of the day, you want to keep those people coming back. You want to keep them happy. So we're in the hospitality industry almost. We have to make sure that they feel wowed, that they want to keep coming back to you, that they trust you, that you're transparent, and that the work is performed top notch. And it doesn't matter what brand it is. It really doesn't.
Nope. Yeah, and I'll agree with that. It doesn't matter what brand it is, right? But because people driving Mercedes make the money to drive a Mercedes. People driving Kias make the money to drive a Kia, right? It's all relative to them. It's still how, for the most part, how they get to where they need to produce money to take care of their families, right? So it's equally important to them. Doesn't matter whether it's Mercedes, Kia, or Ford that's on the front of that car.
Absolutely.
And so Migs, and if you want to take this even from the advisor standpoint, how important do you think time management skills are, or coaching? How beneficial would time management coaching be?
Glad you actually said it, because I was going to hit it that way too. I was going to say, you take this to the flip side and put it on the advisors, and what happens when the customer's checking in. All those details that you're doing, and organization and prioritizing how you are taking care of that customer in front of you is going to be detrimental to the whole process if it's done incorrectly. And if you're not meeting them in the lane, you're not doing the walk around properly, you're not doing the meet and greet. I'll put it out there. One of the biggest things I watch is that handoff situation. A customer comes in, gives the keys to one advisor, and it's an appointment for a different advisor, and they say, "Hey, Mrs. Jones' car's here." And then, advisor two's got the keys and they write it up for whatever the appointment says. And here, that wasn't even what it was here for. There was something totally different. So it goes all back. And then, you circle all that way back to having the proper documentation for the technician. It just creates delays and hiccups and kind of these roadblocks that don't need to be there ultimately for any of the advisors, the technicians, or even the parts people in that regard, because everybody's trying to figure out what piece of the puzzle they have to finish on each ticket every day together in order to get it done efficiently and back to the customer in a timely manner. So if their desk is a mess, if they're completely disorganized and, they don't give the customer the time and they're rushing the process, it only means they're doing that when it comes to the other side of dealing with the technicians, dealing with the parts team, dealing with the sales department. So I think it goes hand in hand. You can really kind of tell how that person is going to kind of interact across the board with all the departments when they do their process. And you watch somebody do their process. If you continue to see Marco check his car in every single time, check the lights, check the horns, top up the fluids, and top up the tires, for sure when the customer picks up that car, you don't even have to question whether or not that stuff's been done. But as you watch somebody kind of fumble through, similar like what Marco and you said, Dave, you watch them kind of fumble through all that. And then, all of a sudden the washer solvent's not filled up and the customer thinks you didn't do the oil change on their car because you didn't top their fluid up. Exactly. Their tire pressures are low. You didn't rotate tires now because you didn't even touch my pressure. So it really sets the narrative across the board and kind of all that. And ultimately at the end of the day kills the relationship that you're trying to grow with the customer, who ultimately drives the retention back to us and keeps us all collecting our paychecks at the end of the day. It's very well summarized there. So it's like Marco said, I think it's real big. Just every section has to be followed, and you got to do it every time the same way. And you'll see kind of just how it progresses you through what you're doing.
What's also a good point in bringing this up for the advisors, and I completely agree with you, Robert, is that what helps too if technicians and everybody involved follows policies, procedures, and sets priorities, the promise time and delivery time will not be an issue, especially if you utilize the software that you have correctly. There's a way to, if you offer a car service, a car wash, that you can kind of track that as well. But I think it's detrimental for the overpromise on the deliver. Oh no, wait, the other way around. Yes, that's what we should be doing, people. We should underpromise and overdeliver. You can only do that if you got all your priorities like ducks in a row.
Absolutely, no doubt there. And Marco, you started with that and you just came back to it of following policies and procedures, right? We spend a lot of time putting those together, and typically they're not done for a nefarious purpose, right? They're done to help the organization, to help the people inside the organization perform better, right? And as the leaders, we're there to, you mentioned roadblocks, Robert, we're there to take those roadblocks and speed bumps away, right? So that advisors and technicians can go as fast as they need to go to take care of customers while following process procedures, right? So they can still move fast, but move with a purpose. All right. And so that segment was brought to you by Petra Automotive Products. And now we move into segment 2, which is the leader's role in productivity. And we'll start on your side, Robert. And how much does the shop setup affect the productivity of the technicians? And that I'll let you take that from whatever side you want to take that from.
No, I think that's when you look at the aesthetics of what the shop looks like and where things are placed, how the technicians are oriented in the shop, where you have the equipment that they need to get to, down to a tool room, how organized your tool room is. All those things are going to be key and then utilizing technology. You know, the program we have through Chrysler has a tool board program for us. So we utilize that, and you can type in the tool number. It tells you what bin it's in. You go to the bin, it's there because we check it. We know it's there, and we audit it and make sure it's there. So from a management side, obviously having all the tools available that will ensure there are no delays for the technician in the shop is key. I think if anybody out there is listening, you know, invest in items for the shop that are going to help them. You know, if they need tools, get them tools. Don't look at the bottom line on a special tool because it's $200 or $2,000. You're going to have to need it for something. There's a reason why you had it, and guaranteed, even though you've only been asked for it once, it's been asked for probably 15, 20 times. Just nobody's ever told you is the realization of it. So, you know, even for me, my guys all know if there's something that we need, something that's missing, bring it to my attention because their job needs to be completely fulfilled. Nobody needs to be looking for anything at the end of the day for it. Parking cars and proper tagging of cars from either your advisor, porter, or however you're parking your cars. That's key to a technician, knowing the location of where the vehicle is, how to get to it, and quickly and being able to get it in and out. If you have the ability to have porters that can pull them in and out of the shop for the technicians, hey, more power to you. You know, do those things. But there's all kinds of different things you can do from any level shop to ensure that you're kind of maximizing the technician's time to keep them in the bay as long as they need to be, which is, again, the main focus. Like Marco said at the beginning of this, he's only making money when he's in that bay. So that's where we got to keep him. We got to proceed to kind of get everybody there. And that's what I look at. I'm a real big proponent of that. I think we have to do everything we can, even down to scheduling. I hold scheduling as kind of my area of what needs to be done for the department is based on me looking at the productivity of the technician, the productivity of the advisors. How can we maximize that day with what's coming in, what's going out, and keeping that workflow good? So do we need a 70% mix? Do we need to look at the schedule and cut it back? Do we have a technician off? Do we reduce the schedule? Do we, you know, just look at what we're bringing in? You know, all different things. Every day is different that you have to look at in order to make sure that you're not jam-packing the guys and ultimately, you know, and I know it happens out there, and I'll say it, you know, you're not stopping your mainline tech to do an oil change because you overpack the shop and you don't have anybody else, and you're going to pull them off an engine job to do a LOF rotate. You know, we know it happens and it's out there, and it's probably the most frustrating thing to watch. So there's a lot to look at from the business side of it outside of the shop, and it just all comes down to pulling little pieces here and there to shave a second off of everything that you can do to really maximize. You know, I think we said it pretty well. You know, maximizing the time that we have available while we're there at the shop is key.
Yeah. And Marco, so from the technician standpoint, does it matter to you where the tire machine is? Does it matter to you where? I mean, sometimes you don't have a choice where the parts department is located, but you know, the sometimes it's the little things, right? Where the that AC machine is stored when it's not being used. Those things matter to you at all?
Absolutely. Just like knowing where the car is at, you got to know where your tools are at. Like if you have your tire machine on this side of the shop and your balancer is on that side of the shop, because that's the only way it worked, you're not doing something right. You're killing productivity. It should be a special place in the shop just for tires. And I know that, you know, tires are a touchy subject when it comes to fixed operations, but you know, whatever. We're the only industry that literally spends $1 to save a penny. So enough with that stuff. You know, just buy it, do it. It's retention. It's not profit. It's retention. Keep these people in the house. It's simple as that. But it's extremely important. And a well-organized tool room, like in Robert's point, is absolutely necessary. And what people just don't understand is like these special tools that these manufacturers make, you can't buy them off a tool truck. You can't find them on, you know, big box stores or online ordering. But if you don't have them, you are, in worst case scenario, just not able to do a job. In a little less worst case scenario, you're going to be spending way too much time and or damaging products. So it is important that everybody is on board with that. Like when you use the tool, you clean it up, you put it back. If you notice that a tool is starting to wear or if something is broken, just report it. No one's going to send you home for it or get mad at you, at least in most shops. But, well, yeah. If it's the same guy over and over again, when it clearly says no impact, and you hear, okay, that's a different story. At that point, I'd be like, yeah, you know what? We paid for the first 3. This one coming out of your pocket. But in general, I would say that we don't really mean to, break the tools that fill my wallet. So just be honest about it. If you know, like, here's something as stupid as AC machine has 100 grams of Freon left in it after you're done with it. Okay, what car takes 100 grams of Freon? None. So if you have to charge the next one, now I'm going to have to wait for my wonderful R1234YF machine to spend 6 hours on sucking down a tank so I can fill another car. If the machine is down, do that while the machine is down. No one's using it. Same like other equipment, like just little maintenances, draining oil carriers, etc. It's extremely important. It all comes together. Like, these are all just pieces of the puzzle that they all have to come together for this to make it work the way that we really, really want it to. And I'm sure that Robert will attest to that, and so will you, Dave. That it's not a one-man operation. It's not a one solution shop.
Absolutely. Our stat of the week, this takes us right into what this is. It's brought to us by Petra Automotive Products. Workers are interrupted every 3 minutes and 5 seconds on average, and they take 23 minutes and 15 seconds while attempting to get back on track. So, Marco, 23 minutes and 15 seconds is a long time to get back on track on that repair that you're making, right? Yeah. And if it's a repair that only pays an hour to begin with, you've now taken more than a third of what that job pays just to get yourself back in the groove because you got pulled off for some reason. Right. So the interruptions are productivity killers. It's probably one of the biggest productivity killers in the shop is those little interruptions that happen throughout the day, right? But because of whatever it is, poor planning. Sometimes it's just an emergency we couldn't prevent, right? Somebody's on vacation, their car broke down, they got it towed in, and we want to get them back up on the road. So we got to pull Marco off of this car that he's working on because it doesn't have to go for another 2 days and have you work on that. It's still that car that you're being pulled off of still takes longer for you to repair, but it was for a good reason that we pulled you off. A lot of times it's not a great reason that we pulled a tech off a car. And killed their productivity. And then at the end of the month, Robert, we're asking him why his productivity wasn't at the level we wanted it to be, right? So how do inconsistent goals or processes affect the productivity of a technician? Marco, for you, I'll say inconsistent goals in the light of, what if they gave you your goal for the month and it's a super high goal, right? That can affect your productivity through your mindset of like, man, I really have a high bar I have to hit this month, and it can adversely affect the numbers that you actually end up doing. And on the other side of that, processes, inconsistent or unclear processes, something you've talked about already in this show of having good processes. How do we make sure that we have those good processes, or when there's a process that needs to be tweaked, how do we address that? How do we go about correcting those things?
I think if it's a repetitive process issue, that it should be relatively easy to spot, recognize, and fix. And this is where I think management should be involved in this part. Management should be on top of accountability. With the system that we use for communication between technicians and parts, for example, everything is logged. You can go back in the history. You can see exactly what time someone changed the status on something. So don't tell me that I ordered a timing chain, timing gears, timing this, timing that, and the bolts. Oh, you didn't tell me to get the bolts. It's right there. So at this point, management needs to step in. It's like, dude, what's now we can't do this. And of course, they're made out of titanium, and it takes 7 weeks to get these bolts. Great, fantastic. So I think that accountability is something that we should all really work on a personal level, because we're so quick to point the finger and, oh, it's not my job, or blame someone else. Oh, it's the rain. Oh, my dog threw up last night. Okay, whatever, dude. You still have a job to do. So I think that accountability on many different levels would be very good. And one of the things that you kind of have to look at the flip side of the processes that we have in place. A lot of times they're too cumbersome. There's too many of them, and they make no sense because they were dreamt up by someone 30 years ago. So we need to be able to have meetings with parts, advisors, management, technicians, and just be able to kind of work out, it's like, hey, where are the bottlenecks? Where are the problems? And how do we address this? I think reviewing your processes would be the very first step in tackling that issue. There's really no solving it, but tackling that issue and moving forward with it. Other than that, again, leave me in my bay. If I send you a message through MPI, for example, I have one of our advisors who'd love to come out and pretty much repeat everything verbally to you, everything he just wrote in MPI. I'm like, yeah, I know. You stop. I don't need, you wrote it. It's right here. It's black and white. Oh, I just wanted to make sure that. Okay. So it's things like that, that the distractions that you said, Dave, those are productivity killers in more ways than you could think of, because there's the mental aspect that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm. So, Robert, I'm going to jump to a different question. So, Marco mentioned the 134A machine a couple of times, and the tank needs to be changed and things, right? So there's other machines and machinery in the shop that have to have some preventive maintenance done to it, or something broke on it, needs to get repaired. If it's not a specialized piece of equipment that has to have, whoever made the piece of equipment fix it. If you're going to have a tech work on that machine or switch over that bottle, are we paying them for that? How are we handling that kind of stuff?
Me personally, I mean, I know how I handle it, and that's depending on who the technician is that work on it. So if it's something simple, like running to get some hardware and putting something back together, and I have an hourly guy that's there, I'm going to utilize him. He's getting paid to do that. I can keep the ball rolling with what's going on. If it's something a little bit more advanced and, my technician's like, hey, I can fix this, and it's one of my flat rate guys, then absolutely. I treat it just like more or less like a customer pay time. Give me how much time you got onto it. We'll tack a little extra on there, and we'll call it a day for you helping me out, because realistically, that's going to save the shop, if not, everybody, time and money to get that back up and running. And then ultimately, we're not waiting days for somebody to come out to repair that. It's up and running at that same day for the most time. So it even helps the technician out, who's probably going to do the work on it to get it fixed as well. So it has twofold. I think it gives benefits across the board to both the technician and the shop, and then the manager to compensate them for that. I feel is 100% the right direction of where you need to go with it. It's definitely appropriate. I don't know. There's no other way to really say. You got to take care of them when they do stuff like that for you. And however you do it, it doesn't necessarily mean you always have to pay them as far as flat rate hours, but finding them, we'll call it what it is, PDI, used car, something like that, to get the extra hours on, and we flag a little bit extra for them on there while we're doing it, stuff like that. Just little things that don't necessarily got to be kind of written to the wayside or just ignored. You can find a way to take care of them, and they usually will tell you what's kind of fair for them too. I don't think anybody's out to hurt each other. And if you work in a proper shop, like Marco said, and everybody's communicating and talking, I'm sure if Marco said, hey, I can fix this, take me about a half hour, he'd probably be paid more than that, because the relationship's there already. And they're already built that rapport that they're just going to take care of each other. So it might take him a half hour, and the management might already agree to pay him, double or more than that, just because they already know how much it saved him in the long run.
Yeah, well, because it's going to take a while if you've got to call a repair person in to do that, fix that machine, right? And either they're going to come in and they're going to look at the machine and determine they need something else, and now you've waited days for them to get there, and now you're going to wait days for the parts to arrive, or they're going to come in and say, I can't do it here, and they got to take your machine, right? Mm-hmm. And then we don't know how long it is, but before we get those things back. So definitely better when we can do it in-house and take care of our techs for doing that. And now it is time for the quote of the week. And that is brought to you by Parts Edge. And the quote of the week is, productivity is never an accident. It is always the result of a commitment to excellence, intelligent planning, and focused effort. And that quote is by Paul J. Meyer, not the Paul Meyer that we all know and love from LinkedIn. Different Paul Meyer, different spelling, but just as prophetic. And so that goes to what you've been saying, Marco, right? Follow your policies and procedures. They're there for a reason. And they are there to help us. And so we're going to move into segment 3. And before we do, segment 2 was brought to you by IntelliCheck. Know your competition. And so segment 3, guys, as we start to round out this show, is working together. And so as an industry, not at your individual shop, Robert and Marco, but as an industry, what could we do better to help the productivity of our technicians? And Robert, I'll start with you on this one.
I think the biggest thing we're going to do to, one, bring it together and increase productivity is sit down and listen to them. I think you'll find a lot more, especially for me. I'm not in the shop all the time. I'm not working on the cars all the time. I'm not pulling them in all the time. So I think when you have those routine meetings about policies and procedures and how we're doing stuff in the shop, you'll get to learn where those bottlenecks are from talking to your team. And every shop's going to be different. Every group of advisors and technicians are going to have a different flow. Every setup in the shop's going to be differently set up. So utilizing all of their expertise and what they're doing every day and saying, hey, this piece here doesn't work. If we put it here, it'd actually help us save us some time. Or if we moved these things around and we staged cars here, these things will help us kind of get things in and out quicker. You don't have to be kind of from the top down. It can work from the ground up and actually make a difference in what we do. So I think communication is really going to be key, just talking and utilizing everybody's talents, not just trying to facilitate a process or a policy without any actual input and just kind of putting it on people. Because realistically, I don't think you get the turn to really get everybody bought in when you try to just put it together yourself. You utilize everybody's powers on that, and then they'll kind of take ownership of it and help you develop it and watch it kind of turn for you.
Yeah, buy-in is definitely important when you're changing anything. I don't care how small it is. Without buy-in, it's not going to work. And Marco, for you, as an industry, what can we do better to help technicians?
Actually, I'm going to go a completely different direction with this. I'm going to say culture and appreciation. It's not all about them. I've blown people's minds saying that it's not necessarily about the money. At the end of the day, I want to be fairly compensated. I want to stand a fair chance to make a fair paycheck. But if I need to take medications to get out of bed in the morning and tremble my way into the shop, you can pay me $1,000 an hour. I don't want it. So culture is so important. Companies have spent billions of dollars on retreats for people to go away and learn culture and brotherhood and togetherness and buy-ins, but we forget the people that actually keep the doors open. For crying out loud, learn their birthdays. How much does a cupcake cost you? It may sound silly, but it is the things like that. You make people feel appreciated. Make them feel welcomed. Give them a voice and listen to them. those are the guys that will do so much more for you than the ones that you pay 3, 4, 500% over what they're actually worth. So culture and appreciation, and it doesn't have to cost a whole lot. Just we're human. Treat us as such.
Yeah, that's I like the direction that you took that. I think that obviously can go throughout the dealership. Knowing the culture, knowing birthdays and things like that. Plenty of technology out there that that most of us are carrying in our hands 99% of the day to remember somebody's birthday. I have times now I'll have a calendar reminder come up and it's somebody's birthday that I worked with 20 years ago. Right. And it's like, oh yeah,
Right.
I can shoot that person a text that it's happy birthday and they may not even remember that they worked with me.
Exactly.
That's huge and goes a long way. And if we can mix that in with some good policies and procedures and a well set up shop, we can all be better for it. And so Marco, sticking with you, something that this might be the same thing. Something that you wish the leaders in this industry knew about techs in their work.
I would welcome any leader, whether it's a GM, a dealer principal, a service director, anyone, to come bring some old clothes with you. Come spend a week with us in the shop. When it comes down to warranty, I might as well be an attorney because I have to pretty much go to court and state my claim onto why did I dare replace this part, because the engineer said it will never fail. Well, technicians' jobs is to fix engineer screw-ups. That's what we do. That's the only reason we have technicians. If we had no engineers, you don't need technicians. So I would welcome anyone that doesn't understand why it takes so long. What's the holdup? Why this? Why that? Actually spend time in the shop. Shadow a technician for a week or multiple technicians. See what's going on to get the parts out of parts. Talk to advisors to get the correct information for the car, how the workshop manual work, etc. And every step that I have to take to be compliant with, first and foremost, the manufacturer's repair policies and procedures, and second of all, within the company's procedures, and not have another visit with HR, for example. But that's a different story. Just kidding. But I would really welcome any kind of leader, whether you're in the dealership, whether you work at corporate, whether you work at a manufacturer. Actually, like what they call in the army, boots on the ground. Yeah. Come lead from the front. Come spend some time with the men that are actually in the trenches doing the work.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, you mentioned GMs, but most GMs that I know tell me they spend time in the shop every day. And it's usually walking from their car through the shop to their office. But they say they're in the shop every day, right?
Only if it rains.
All right. And Miggs, same question to you, just reversed. Something that you wish technicians knew about the leader's position, or not position, the leader's job.
We all have an agenda and we're trying to make, no, I'm just kidding. At the end of the day, I think if you have the right leader in the shop with you, you're going to see that, the goal is to, if you look at how, I'm going to say probably every single leader, if not advisor, and everybody else in the front that depends on the technicians are paid. You have to do well in order for us to do well. And I tell my guys and ladies that all the time. My goal and my hope is that you understand I'm there to try to push you to do your best, because if you do your best, it means I get the best benefits at the end of the day for myself as well. So I can't succeed and do great things with the department, with the shop, with the store, if I don't have a team that's pushing just as hard behind me, or for that case in front of me, because I'm pushing from the back, trying to help them be the best version of themselves out in the shop. But I know there's there's some certain shops and things like that that may not feel the case, but I promise everybody's trying to do their best in that regard. And same token to everybody, if you ever want to spend a week out on the desk dealing with customers face to face every day, it is a mind-blowing experience that will get your get your adrenaline going very, very good. So it's an interesting place to work, but I think ultimately in the large majority in all the shops across the country here, I think we have a group of leaders anymore that are coming up that truly are trying to push the best out of everybody in the shop. They want to see them succeed. They want to see them buy houses. They want to see them buy cars. They want to see them have families and spend time with their family and stuff like that. So when all that comes together, it just pays itself forward into what we get to kind of enjoy ourselves too. So.
And to jump on that real quick, Robert, what I think technicians should know about managers and advisors is really the blunt force trauma that you guys receive from customers. When a customer shows up in Robert's office, it's not to thank him because the coffee was so great. No, they stand there yelling and screaming at you like an irate monkey because something just went wrong. A lot of times it falls back on the policies and procedures, but we've handled that. But I think technicians don't really see just how belligerent customers can be and how rude, and they have to take that, not take it personal, be able to just like butter, wash it off and keep going. So for technicians listening today, watching this, like they deal with people, we deal with cars. We can kick the tire, we can call them names. You can't do that with customers.
Not have a job. No, you definitely
Yeah.
You can do it one.
And to take into that, Marco, the worst part about that is a lot of it's all self-inflicted. The customer's not there angry because of anything. Realistically, there's something going on outside those elements, or we inflicted it ourselves and we caused the situation ourselves. But if we did, like you said, policies and procedures were followed correctly, you'd have a lot more praises going on and a lot less headaches at the end of the day. But I don't discredit that at all. I think if you look at the realization, I don't think any customer truly wants to come in and yell at somebody. I think there's a lot more going on, and I think we're just the sounding board for it because we're there. We touched an expensive piece of equipment that they own, and we're riding their coattails at that point and trying to figure out exactly how to diffuse the situation. And that's ultimately what we do all day. So it's a different cycle.
Yeah. It's typically a failure in communication somewhere.
100%.
Right, that happened that caused that customer to be upset. At the end of it all, the technicians are out there trying to do the best that they can. I was a terrible technician, but I can tell you I never intended to fix a car wrong. Right. Technicians are not out there intentionally putting the wrong part in the car. Advisors, for the most part, are not intentionally giving a bad complaint to a tech. It may be through neglect that they don't get all the information that they should. But they want that car fixed because they don't want that customer yelling at them before they take them to Robert's office, right? So we're all trying to do the same thing here.
Yeah.
Marco, Robert, thank you so much for your time. This is a great discussion that hopefully will lead to some people figuring out some more ways to increase the productivity out of their shops. And as we go, a thank you to all our sponsors, and we will see everyone next week.